Try that again. Hello, everyone. Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this talk on open source. I did a short version of this talk at NDC Copenhagen last summer, and it was quite a challenge to cover everything that I wanted to in 15 minutes. I'm very grateful for NDC for giving me a full-length slot this time. In Copenhagen, I actually called the talk "Open Source is Broken and It's Your Fault!" And I forgot actually that the videos from here go up on YouTube. And when someone linked to the video on LinkedIn, I was brave and I went onto YouTube and I looked at the comments that people had posted. And one of them was, "My fault. These clickbait titles are pure cringe." So I'm all up for constructive criticism. So for him, God, I assume it was a him. I'm sorry. For them, and the 14 thumbs up. Welcome to the far more inclusive, welcomed Open Source is Broken, and it's our fault. No exclamation mark. Yeah, you see, I can take on board criticism. But regardless of what it's called, the premise is still the same. Too many people make a profit from the efforts of far too few unpaid and overworked individuals. And when the weight of responsibility of that gets too much and they start to burn out, as sadly some have, the projects suffer. And the people and the companies who use and depend upon those projects, they realize how much they valued the efforts. I acknowledge I'm not talking all open source, but a significant amount. Another comment on YouTube was from a maintainer objecting to, apparently I said, you have to, you need to. I must have said that quite a lot in the video. Of course, I apologize. I was probably just fired up and enthusiastic about a topic I'm passionate about. Of course, there is no obligation on either side. Maintainers of open source software, people who put their code in the open under an MIT license, are under no obligation to maintain it whatsoever, or to even care about who uses it. But a lot of them do. And on the other side, people who consume, I'm going to call you consumers, people who use and depend on open source are under no obligations to anything either. But that's the situation that's landed us where we are. So today we're going to learn from some well-known open source projects. We're going to see what options there are for maintainers and discuss how us consumers can help redress the balance. And I really hope that by the end of this talk, if I've done my job properly, you will have reframed how you think about your open source dependencies. Because I'm really not predicting the end of open source. Far from it. I'm a massive fan. Open source is pretty fundamental in innovation in our world. It runs pretty much everywhere, from kernel to your phones. Linux, the obvious one, powering everything from cloud to mobile. Git, Kubernetes, Firefox, WordPress, that reportedly runs something like 43% of the world's websites. Of course, there are other open source CMSs available. For example, this one, Umbraco. If you haven't heard of it, it's free. It's MIT licensed .NET CMS platform. It's backed by a commercially viable, sustainable business. Revenue streams come from hosting, add-ons, training support. Everyone in this photo earns a living working at a company around a CMS product, which means the people who use the core CMS don't pay a penny. And in case you haven't spotted me yet, there I am. And if you're in the talk previously, I've just put a line through my boss, Emma, who was the person on this stage talking about AI. I was here at NDC London last year, and David Whitney's excellent talk on open source, and I was shocked when he said, "I'd never wish a successful open source project on anyone." And I was shocked because to me, successful open source looks like Umbraco, the company that I work at, where I'm now head of developer relations. I spent 10 years contributing to Umbraco as a community contributor, and then I turned it into my day job. I'm one of the lucky people who can make a living from open source. But of course, David Whitney wasn't talking about companies, projects like Umbraco, when he said this, he was thinking of the projects that are maintained by 1 or 2 individuals in their spare time and depended upon by development teams and companies across the world. And wow, have we experienced some high-profile incidents that highlight the extent of these dependencies. I'm looking around. I think most of you are old enough to remember the Heartbeat bug in 2014, which affected OpenSSL, a core crypto library used across the web. It had been maintained for years by a small team with very minimal funding. I think before the vulnerability, they say $2,000 in donations a year. After the vulnerability, went up to $9,000 a year. They estimate the cost, as much as you can judge the cost of these things, the estimated cost of the vulnerability was as high as $500 million. A classic example of trillion-dollar industries resting on a few underpaid volunteers. In 2021, a guy called Christian Grobmeier went to help his son with a Minecraft problem. He found a note on the screen saying, "We are suffering a security hole from log4j. Please be careful and update immediately." That's how he, the main maintainer of log4j, discovered the bug known as log4shell. He then changed his weekend plans, and him and his small team spent the next 2 days over their weekend firefighting, and the bug that was known as the bug that broke the internet, they spent their weekend fixing it. And I just wonder, what if those few people had decided to go for a weekend away to a detox, no-tech camp? What would have happened to the world then? Now, admittedly, after this, GitHub did start an initiative to try and improve the security of open source. It's called the GitHub Secure Open Source Fund. But we still have problems. In 2024, I'm going to have to say XZ Utils, aren't I? Despite the fact that I think I want to say XZ Utils backdoor. This one I find the most terrifying, really, because it was a long game of social engineering. For about 2 years, a contributor under a pseudonym looked to be a very helpful maintainer to this project, making legitimate contributions to this library that is a dependency of OpenSSH. And because the project was under-resourced, overstretched, this seemingly very useful, dedicated contributor became a co-maintainer. So with the keys to the castle, they then introduced a carefully hidden backdoor, essentially a supply chain attack waiting to happen. Thanks to a very curious Microsoft engineer, it was caught before it was released wide enough to cause a catastrophic global incident. I see some nodding. We've all seen this cartoon and some glorious variations of it since as well. The XKCD cartoon called Dependency that shows all modern digital infrastructure being held up by a project that one random person has been thanklessly maintaining for years. And it's that phrase, thanklessly maintaining, that I kind of want to focus on today. Because often open source libraries and projects are released because the owner needed to solve a problem. They solved the problem and they made it free and open source for others and probably their future selves to benefit from. Because that's the fun part, solving the problem, sharing it with the world, and seeing who gets to use it. The creator of Async API recently announced that he was stepping down after 9 years of maintenance, and he acknowledges that he was never trying to start a movement. I was just trying to fix a specific headache that I had. And I think that is a very common start of a lot of open source projects that end up being at risk. This is Jacob Fat Thornton. Apparently that's how he was known, one of the creators of Twitter Bootstrap. And he had the lovely phrase for the beginning part of an open source project. He called it the cute puppy phrase. Because You start your open source project, it's fun, it's exciting, people around the world are using it. They're talking about you on Twitter, which is what it was called back in Twitter bootstrap days. People say nice things. They help with your software, they give you ideas, the project improves, it's all great, it's great for your reputation. But then after a while, people stop getting so excited about it. It's then just a burden of maintenance, and joy, the joy that he felt, was replaced by guilt and obligation as his cute little puppy got older. And I really should have put a cute puppy photo, because you should always put those in, but never mind. So yes, thanklessly maintaining, because maintaining open source is so much more than the fun bit of code. You've got to triage issues, fix bugs, review pull requests, really care about security vulnerabilities, evaluate people's feature requests and think, does that make sense? Write documentation, answer support questions, the list goes on. And the word thanklessly, well, it can be thankless if there's little or no income as a result of it. Customers can be quite entitled when they demand that their bug fixes are prioritized. But project deadlines are really not the maintainer's problem. And when I've been looking at this talk, it's actually frankly shocking how entitled some people can be. It's like they've forgotten they've got everything for free. And over an extended period of time, the lack of support and negative comments can really take its toll. And you might think, well, just ignore the negative comments. But I don't know, if you're like me, 20 people say good things, one says something bad. It's the bad thing, the criticism that sticks with me. And generally, maintainers care. They really care. They do want to help. There is a chap in the Embraco world called Lee Kelleher. He is a very experienced collaborator. He's built lots of packages, think plugins, for Embraco over the years. And he explains it very well on the README of his popular package called Contentment. I'll try to help the best I can, but I've been doing open source for a long time, and I've experienced my fair share of burnout and empathy fatigue. He is exhausted at feeling empathy for the situation you're in. I'm very sorry that this project doesn't work in your scenario, but honestly, I've lost any more empathy. He's also kept a record of the hours that he spent on this project in his spare time. Admittedly, when it started, it was sponsored by a company. But yes, he spent over 2,500 hours on this project. So a bit of a reality check for the people who now use it and take it for granted, perhaps. But he still does it. And he does it because he loves it, despite the periods of burnout. He loves collaborating and building in public. And taking the project in the direction that he wants to go, take it in. And you can tell he enjoys it because he's put this little Lee was here, little Easter egg in the top right. This is the Embraco back office admin area. And if you install Contentment, then you get Lee was here. And that to me just says, I still enjoy doing this. All puns intended. So maintainers do reach a fork in the road when they're fed up, when they've had enough of working, usually in their spare time, for free, for very little in return. So we're going to take a look at a few well-known open source projects from the .NET world, because I think most of us are from the .NET world. It's the world I know best, at least, to see what options maintainers have. This is James Newton King. For about 10 years. I think he was the solo maintainer of JSON.NET, which basically was used by every .NET project around at that time. He ended up being employed by Microsoft. Now, this is not a scalable solution to open source, and I think quite a few people would not want to be employed by Microsoft. That's up to you. But yep, they employed him, they supported the project. He no longer works on it, I believe. He's gone elsewhere in Microsoft. But another incredibly widely used project in the .NET space is Fluent Validation, maintained by Jeremy Skinner here in the UK for nearly 15 years. He's gone down the sponsorship route. So if you go to his GitHub sponsor page, it explains that If you've benefited from my work in your commercial projects, please contribute back. Please sponsor him. Commercial projects, as in if you're making money from using my code, please pass some of it on so that he can continue to support and improve that product that helps you. And if there's enough people doing that, then perhaps this project is sustainable. Usually quite a big if, though. As you can see, he's currently got 15 sponsors, despite having such a large number of downloads on NuGet. This smiley American is Jimmy Bogard. He's speaking here on Friday, I think. And he's been the solo maintainer of AutoMapper and Mediator, another two very well used packages in the .NET world. Initially, these were built because the company where Jimmy worked as a developer needed to solve a problem. As ever, someone had a problem to solve, they built it. They released it open source, and for years, the company allowed Jimmy to work on it during the day job because the company needed those projects. So they were effectively sponsoring those projects. But then the situation changed, and Jimmy found himself not having any direct need for these packages himself, and so his ability to maintain them disappeared. Last year, Jimmy made the brave leap and turned maintaining AutoMapper and Mediator into his full-time day job. Brave because starting a company to facilitate licensing is a big undertaking. You need to set up a business, of course. You need to actually become an expert in licensing and legal matters, which I don't know about any of you, but that's not why I get up in the morning. You need to work out how to distribute the licenses, how to enforce the licenses, all these sorts of decisions where there is no easy way to do it. And you've got to put all of those in place before you can start getting back to maintaining the code. As with a lot of maintainers who go down this route, Jimmy's keeping the source open. He's using a dual licensing model. And so the RCL, the reciprocal public license, which means pay with code, as in if you're going to put your code in the open, using the same license, then that covers you, you don't need to pay. But if you don't want to put, and most of us aren't going to go and put our code in the open with the RPL license as well, then the commercial license is what you need. There is a very generous free tier, as a lot of these dual license open source projects do choose. They recognize that a lot of small businesses, charities, that's the word, sorry. Charities use open source software, and they're not expecting them to have to buy a license. Everyone has their thoughts on how to sort of arrange this, whether it's team size, turnover, a contribution of both. Some open source projects choose to sort of give sliding discounts according to turnover or usage. As I say, all these things, all these thoughts, all these decisions that have to go into turning your hobby into your day job by going commercial. Version 15 was the first licensed version of AutoMapper, and I think you can see it. I forgot to put an arrow, but I think you can see where that is, and you can see that people are still downloading it. But also what I find interesting is if you notice that between 2022 and 2024, there was one release a year, and he's already in the last 6 months since going commercial, done 4 releases. So this is proving that this is now a much more healthier situation than it used to be. If you're curious, if you're an AutoMapper or Mediator user, and you're curious what happens if you upgrade without configuring a license key, you get warnings such as these. You do not have a valid license key for the Lucky Penny software AutoMapper. This is allowed for development and testing scenarios. But it's a warning. So if this were to get to production, your system would still work. It's not like he's broken you operationally by putting this license requirement in. And in his FAQ answer of how is it enforced at runtime, that final sentence, we trust our users. Because there's nothing that he's not going to know who's using this, but he's going to trust that companies, commercial entities of a size big enough to need to pay him money for the license are not going to run illegal software. He trusts his users. Oh, look, there's an arrow. Yeah. On LinkedIn, a while ago, he acknowledged that going commercial has enabled him to re-establish his relationship with the project. The GitHub issues and support requests used to feel like an albatross around his neck, whereas now he sees them as opportunity. He sees them as he now wants to help the people who use his software. So the project will prosper as a result, and those people who've built their businesses and dependent on them will benefit from those improvements. So as far as I can see, AutoMapper and Mediator have been commercialized as fairly as possible. I wish Jimmy every success with this, and as long as enough companies that are above the threshold pay what they should, then this looks like pretty sustainable open source to me. But of course, anyone using AutoMapper is within their rights to stick to version 14, the last MIT license version. When you release you probably know this, but when you release a version to NuGet, you say what license that's under. So you cannot change retrospectively the license. In order to change license, you have to make a new release. Ideally in a major, just in case anyone's listening. So you can fork version 14 and continue maintaining it on your own. I'm not advocating for this, I'm just saying you could. And as long as you update your CS proj to use the square brackets around the version number, then auto-updating tools won't try to upgrade it. So you just stay on the last version that you were using. One phrase I hear a lot when open source goes commercial, is, like AutoMapper, is this phrase, rug pulling. And this is a real bugbear of mine. I believe rug pulling means suddenly betraying people who trusted you and then leaving them in a bad position. So, and the maintainers I've been researching have all communicated their intentions quite clearly for quite a long time in advance. They're announcing that there will be a new major version coming and it will have a new licensing model. And so if this was a surprise for anyone, then I'd say it's your fault for not following the maintainers of the open source dependencies that you have. As for leaving them in a bad position, well, I've already explained that you can just stay where you are, stay on the MIT license version or maintain your own fork. I think the only people who can get really upset are the people who have contributed significantly to the project when it was under MIT license. I don't have any proof of this, but I would like to think that the maintainers like Jimmy those would be the first people they would talk to explain what they're going to do. I would like to think that they probably have in perpetuity free licenses to keep using the software. I don't know, but knowing how these maintainers who put dual licenses out there, they're doing it for the benefit of the project, I'm pretty sure they're going to do something like that. Sadly, not all projects go in a good, positive direction when it gets too much for the maintainers. This is Nuke, a popular build automation tool. It's a C# alternative to the dreaded, feared, hated YAML files. Last November, the maintainer confirmed he was calling it a day. It was in response to a GitHub discussion where people were asking about the future of the project because he'd gone very quiet for a long time. He explained that his inactivity was the result of the well-known open source software sustainability problem, and the final straw for him came when, I haven't seen them, but apparently various attacks on him personally happened following his inactivity. And so this is one of the forks, this is one of the outcomes with this all going wrong, is this is now looking like it's going to be unmaintained abandonware. I think it was started in 2017. It's used by a lot of people. As I say, it's a very interesting GitHub discussion. There's people on there saying, we rely on this tool. We use it for over 100 pipelines. And I wonder if they're now wondering if they could have done more before it hit crisis mode to support the project, if they're using it and depending on it that much. The maintainer says that they are not going to consider bringing someone else on, but it's MIT license. The community can fork it under a new name and maybe build a new project that way. Time will tell. If they do, I hope they can find a sustainable way to continue it. And for those people who think, why didn't he just go commercial? Well, it's not always about the money. I think probably everyone in this room wishes there were more than 24 hours in a day. Time is a resource as important, more important than money. But if financial support was the problem, then, as I say, talk to any open source maintainer, Jimmy, who's here on Friday, if the storms allow him to get here from America. It's not just, you can't just go commercial. There's quite a lot of work and quite a lot of risk in doing so. The easy thing is, of course, to enable GitHub sponsorships. That's filling in a few forms and clicking a few buttons. But then that relies on people actually opting in and sponsoring these projects. And the uncomfortable truth is that too few of us do. It's a one-way street of companies saving time, money, using free labor and not contributing back. I do understand that the sponsorship route doesn't work with some company procurement processes, and I wish I had a solution to that, but I don't. But if someone does, please let me know. So, yes, excellent question, people in the room. How can you help? I think I've explained. I was trying not to be too negative in this talk, but it's quite tough. But anyway, let's try and be a bit more positive now. How can we help? What can we as consumers do to improve the situation? Well, you need to identify, because that is a typo, isn't it? That says identity. Well done, me. Yeah. You need to identify your key open source software dependencies and then invest in the highest risk ones. Of course, that might be meaning invest money if they're asking for it. That sponsorship or licensing is appropriate. Just going to say, if you can afford Azure, you can afford to sponsor your open source dependencies. Just putting it out there. You can also invest time and your team's time, to try and ease the burden for maintainers. Employees should be encouraged to contribute during the working week. This includes things like triaging issues. If people are raising issues on an open source project, anyone can go and validate that that issue exists. They can help say, not on my machine, love that one. Is it a duplicate issue? Is it maybe old? Is it still valid? Help them triage the issues list. Improve documentation. Documentation, I don't think anyone finds it interesting. Obviously, jury's out whether we still need it. But anyway, thanks AI. But documentation is quite often where people do want to still get started, so help with that. Make pull requests. Of course, the classic way to contribute to open source is actually with code. Can you fix a bug that's been reported yourself? Ideally, if you found your own bug, fix your own bug. If you do, then please pay close attention to the contribution guidelines and only fix that bug. I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and being British and liking a cup of tea, I did think if someone invites you into their house and says, oh, can you make a cup of tea? You're going to go into the kitchen and maybe the tea bags are somewhere where you wouldn't think they were. Oh, I didn't expect to find the mugs in this drawer. But you're just going to make a cup of tea. You're not going to reorganize their kitchen and move the mugs around while you're making that cup of tea. And I think that's kind of the same thing. If you're doing a PR for a bug fix, fix the bug. Please don't go refactoring it because you believe it should be done this way. If you do think a refactor is a good idea, performance reasons, maintainers love performance improvements. If you do think you've found a performance improvement, raise an issue and talk about it with them first. Unrequested big PRs for refactors just add to the burden for maintainers. They do, nice nodding, thank you. They do not help. And I really would recommend that people invest in this way in open source. As I say, I worked with Umbraco for 10 years. I ran my own web development agency. I contributed during the workday. I learned so much. It improved my coding skills, really improved my communication skills. Writing on issues and communicating with people, you have no idea where they are in the world. It really helps you to communicate, despite me tripping over my words now. So I think it's actually quite a selfish activity, contributing in this way. And Umbraco, these are the sort of contributions that we want. We're not looking for sponsorship. We want these sorts of contributions, ideally from your working day. That's sustainable open source is when employers realize the value and they encourage and enable employees to do this during the day, not work-life balance is out the window, you get home and you're doing it for 2 hours in the evening when you really should be putting your kids to bed. That's not quite what we're looking for. So, how can maintainers help us? Because there is another side to this. How can they help us, the consumers? Well, in my opinion, it's be more transparent about the situation. Make it easier for people to appreciate who's behind the project and how much time and how they're able to support it. Perhaps maybe as a maintainer, you'd love to go part-time and maybe work 4 days a week and spend 1 day a week maintaining this project. And if you've got enough sponsors, then you'd be able to do that. And you do the maths and you've set a goal for that number of sponsors. If you explain that's what you'd like to do, then human to human, maybe you're more likely to get more sponsors as a result. I know some people, especially men, aren't very good at asking for help, but I think that is perhaps what we need to encourage and see more, so that assuming we are monitoring the open source dependencies that we value, we would know that things aren't going very well, that they're starting to struggle, that they need help. Again, I go back to the XZ Utils problem, and I worry about that, but anyway, that's another problem. There are various initiatives that people are have been running to try and help promote healthier open source. This is the open source maintenance fee. I think it's just sort of adding visibility to the idea of sponsor the open source dependencies that you have that are asking for sponsorship. So it's encouraging maintainers to ask for sponsorship and for the consumers to fulfill it. I think to say that you are part of this, you have to subscribe to every open source dependency that you have that asks for money, and then you can say, yes, we are an open source supporter. There's something called Open Source Friday, which I love the idea of this. It's employers saying for at least 2 hours a week on a Friday, you should be spending time contributing to open source. I don't know why they're all sitting on the same bicycle, but I like this idea. And then, of course, you can say that you do it and it's something else. Your marketing team would probably love it if you joined up and said this. Something else I discovered that I didn't know existed until I was doing some more research for this was PKG Store, packagestore.io. This is actually a consolidated list of all the commercially available NuGet packages. So you'd see here AutoMapper, the Abalonia XPF, Hangfire Pro. So if you realize that you would actually like to pay and support these commercial projects, then you can find them easily here. So I could hardly not say AI, could I? Open source in the age of AI. AI is, of course, having an effect. I think I saw the maintainer of the Curl project reporting on how much AI slop he now has to tidy up as part of his maintenance. Recently, we had the news from Tailwind CSS that it had to lay off 75% of its workforce. Their main revenue stream is advertising from documentation. Now, of course, AI has been trained on that documentation, and people use AI tools to get answers to their questions, and so their traffic to the docs has dropped off. Then we heard that they've been rescued by Vercel because it turns out that they were really dependent, big users of it, and so they've rescued it. And interesting that they waited until crisis mode before they stepped in and did that. I've seen one open source maintainer saying that they don't want pull requests of code, they want prompts. And then they'll use those to run, and they'll run them themselves to generate the code. I hope this doesn't become the norm. That doesn't sit well with me, because open source projects and libraries, they give us the human element that we need on top of code. AI will give you the code, but we still need governance. We still need the security considerations. We want software to be safe, maintainable, and trustworthy. So yes, of course, AI is helping us to generate code to solve problems, but I don't see it replacing open source library. I saw someone showing off that they had spent 3 hours getting AI to basically rewrite AutoMapper or something. And it's like, well, it was there, open source version 14. You could have just forked it. Anyway, speaking of AI, one thing I haven't talked about is how you go about working out your highest risk dependencies. The AI comment will make sense in a minute. You need to work out the bus factors. It's a terrible phrase because I mean, I'm not a bus driver myself, but I live in London. I see a lot of buses. I've never seen a bus accident. But anyway, it's the phrase bus factor. The idea that how many people have to step in front of a bus and die in order for your project to fail. Bus factor. So I didn't make this up. But it's a lovely picture, and it's actually just down the road from where we are. If one of your key dependencies has a bus factor of 1, then that means that if that sole maintainer isn't looking both ways and they cross the road, your dependency is at risk. And so it's quite obvious to say that should be the first place that you should be looking to make your investment. So how do you work out the bus factor of an open source project? How do you work out how big a risk is this project? Well, key thing is the repository owned by the main contributor? That's quite a red flag in this respect. How many people have commit rights? Do you know you can't see that? That's not public information. You cannot see how many people have commit rights to a public repository unless you have actual permissions to that repository. You can go and find it out. You can go, well, you can guess. You can go and look at all the recent commits that have been merged, and you can see who was merging them. If you can merge, then you've got, obviously, the rights. Perhaps the README has a clear explanation of how the project's supported and financed. There are other things in GitHub that you can go and look at. You can go and look at the contributions graph, how many of the contributions are by one person or just 1 or 2 people. And then there are other things, and I put dots there because I started to get quite bored of thinking about all the ways that you could do it. And then I talked to my colleague Seb, who's sitting here, and I was going, God, you know, it's actually quite complicated. Quite a lot of grunt work, magic phrase, grunt work, and he was like, AI. It's not how he said it, sorry. But he was like, well, we can automate this, Lotte. And so a couple of hours later, I nerd sniped him. A couple of hours later, he gave me a Claude Code skill that will do that for us. And it was way more fun working with him on the skills than building slides. So this happens. I put talks together, and I find something boring to explain, and so I build a tool to automate it, and then I end up in the talk talking about the tool rather than the things that... Anyway, welcome to the recently released OSS Health Skills repository that's on my GitHub. There are 3 skills which we've put online so that you can try them and give us some feedback. Bless you. You can install it, so this is Claude Code. You can install it directly from the GitHub URL, and then when it finishes installing, it's going to confirm that it's installed 3. There are now 3 skills that you can use. Dependency extractor, which extracts the dependencies. The dependency funding analysis skill, which analyzes the dependencies across, analyzes the repositories that are depended on. And then for a single project, the project funding profile generates detailed funding profiles for individual projects. And then when that's installed, now, it's okay, so I'm just seeing what time. I don't like doing live demos. It's never gone well, just to moderate your expectation. But I figured it would be worth seeing if we could get this to work. And to do that, so here I am in Claude Code. Hello, welcome to Claude Code. How can I help you today? Excellent. Has anyone got an idea of an open source repository project that they'd like to know what state it appears to be to this skill? Anyone? Serilog. Do you know the owner? I need to know the GitHub organization. It's probably Serilog/Serilog, isn't it? Yeah. Just try Serilog. Okay. Right, now this is my most feared thing, is typing with people watching. If you could all just shut your eyes for a minute, that would be great. Okay, so what is the funding? I don't need to say it because you can see it. What is the funding status of Serilog? Is that going to work, Seb? What do you think? Maybe. Is it? Okay, well, you know what? I keep being told, tell the AI less. Tell Uncle Claude, we were in this awful habit of calling it Uncle Claude. Tell Uncle Claude less each time. So it's found the skill. It's found a skill called project funding profile. That sounds good. And now we're gonna see what happens. I'm glad the internet's working. That's pretty. I imagine there's a lot of people doing talks over the next 3 days who are very glad that the internet's working. It's going to find the funding profile for Serilog, finding the contributors. It's going to take a while, so I tell you what we might do. Apparently, don't worry about that error. That's fine. I ran this earlier on the Embraco CMS, in case you haven't heard. I work there. So the Embraco CMS asking for the dependencies of our open source product. What are the funding statuses of those? It's found 15. The skill is already set to ignore Microsoft stuff. Microsoft don't need our money in this way, at least. So it's listing out those, and it's given a funding gap status and some key signals. And then for each one, it goes through in priority order. And if I could find my page down key, there we go, that's easier. So for example, MarkDig is apparently high priority. It's got 1 maintainer, very high bus factor. You can use GitHub sponsors, so they're up for that. OpenPR's 4, that's quite good, actually. But maybe this is a bit out of date. Swashbuckle, maintained by Martin Costello, I believe. That's got some information in there. Funding gap severe, extremely popular, but barely funded. HTML agility pack. We'll go through all of these, and then at the end, it confirms which ones don't have any funding infrastructure. So, oh, okay. So, well, okay. We may have to run it again on a more interesting one. Excluded from analysis, confirming that the Microsoft ones, of course, if you had your own ones that you didn't want to continually investigate, you could add it to your version of the skill. But it's giving us a recommended funding strategy. Now, we're an open source CMS product, but we do already actually sponsor Examine. But this is really valid information for us. We have an open source sustainability initiative, and so we have data. I mean, please don't take this obviously literally, like, you know, don't do some of your own investigation as well, but it will give you a real head start on where your time and perhaps money should be invested. Well, let's just see what happened to the high concern. Apparently it's critical. 0 formal funding channels. So, okay, we maybe need to tell it that if you're not asking for money, then we don't need money. But anyway, but that's actually maybe not true, because of course, maybe they just haven't asked for help. Has anyone got another idea? Okay, well, here's one I did earlier in true Blue Peter style as well. I talked earlier about the fact that Nuke, the build tool, automation tool Nuke, was getting abandoned. And I wonder if this would have given us a heads up before we started. The bus factor, yep, so 90% of the contributions by one person. Risk level critical, single maintainer with 90% of all commits. 18 sponsors. Funding channel. One of the most widely used build systems in the ecosystem, 30 million total downloads. And yeah. Well, anyway, burnout signals, looking for maintainers. So as I say, we started this on Sunday night. So I'm sure that it can be improved. What definitely can be improved is the contribution guidelines that we will have on the open source repository, because as I say, when I was trying to work out how to explain to you how to do this manually, it just was tedious. So hopefully this will give you some inspiration and you can try it yourself. And now all I have to do is get back to the presentation. Nice, Lotte. I'm a bit early, but that's your fault for not thinking of more demos that you wanted to do, just saying. Please give the tool a go. As I say, we'd love to hear how you get on with it. Pull requests are, of course, welcome. And to finish up, please reframe how you see spending time or money on your open source dependencies. It's an investment in reducing risk for yourselves more than anything, not just charity. You can also say thank you. Did you know that? I mean, it's not as helpful. It's not going to feed your kids, but sometimes we're very good to just say, oh, this doesn't work. And you know what? The initial one of, I love your project. It's really helped me. And then you report the bug. I mean, I don't think it's just me being British who needs to put a compliment sandwich around something, but you know, there is, I didn't put a slide in there, but there's someone who has something, it's the MIT license, except you commit to saying thank you once a year or something like that. You raise an issue just to say thank you, which is a lovely idea, but then of course you've got to close the issue. So, but anyway, say thank you more. And I'm a big believer in the ripple effect. In the Embraco world, we see it a lot. You see contributions being made by people. It inspires other people to do the same. Whether we're talking about financial or time contributions, when you are seen doing it, other people can go, oh, I could have done that. I could have helped that project. So your investment will inspire others to do the same. So you can find me on Linktree /Lotte Picture. I love criticism if delivered constructively. So please let me know. Ideally though, Embraco has a booth upstairs, floor 5, next to the best coffee at NDC. Come and talk to us and let's try this tool while you're sitting at the booth. We won't sell you Embraco, costs nothing by the way, so I don't need to sell you anything. But I'd love to hear what I've underestimated, if you think I've got anything wrong, if I've forgotten something. Let's chat in person. We're here till Friday evening. Thank you very much.